So yeah, I'm Saunji Fife. I am 54 years old, and I can tell you I started my period at 13 and had heavy periods and cramps probably since the beginning. But back then you just kind of took it for what it was, right? You didn't really like too young to really understand something could be causing this pain, just kind of always assumed this is how it's supposed to be. In my 30s, I was finally diagnosed with fibroids. However, after an ultrasound, it showed the fibroids, maybe about 4 that were small. When your fibroids are small, it's sort of a wait and see. Still continued with the heavy cramping, all of the symptoms, and just always attributed to having fibroids. That's the way it is. So I would say entering perimenopause, having, again, a lot of the same symptoms, but, more frequent cycles, heavy just all over. So about actually last year, this time, I was in Phoenix at a conference and just started bleeding heavily and passing really large clots, like all day. And
Wow.
it lasted for a day. So I was in Phoenix. It actually stopped that evening. So I was flying home the next day. And then it was sort of like this wait and see. Let me see, was that, is it something with menopause? Until maybe another month, same thing happened. So unfortunately for me, I was also caregiving, and my dad was entering late stages at that time. So it was just, I wasn't able to get to the doctor until after he passed and could make an appointment, but didn't really experience that again. However, when I went to the doctor, she immediately saw that there was a large fibroid that was pushing through the cervix and probably attributed the continuous spotting and things like that to the fibroids having grown.
Wow.
One of the things I learned is you have to find a doctor that listens to you and understands when you say that you're experiencing pain, what that means. Not to go down a tangent, but there are studies that show that, particularly for women of color, doctors don't assess that they experience pain at the same level as their white counterpart. And I think so finding the right doctor is one. And then two, just really being an advocate for yourself. So I think, I sort of fell to the fact that this is the way, because no one really helped me. The main solution was always to put me on Percocet. I never wanted to take Percocet just because I didn't feel like that was a proper solution. So, after a while, you sort of become numb to the pain. So you develop a high tolerance to pain. And you don't really recognize that that's not the norm. So
No.
even as I got older, having constant lower back pain became the norm. You just learn to live with it. So, it wasn't until I went to my last appointment and, she was like, oh no, I need to have you take the ultrasound right away, and just giving you a heads up, they may recommend, a hysterectomy, which I was okay with. My doctor actually recommended CIGC, and her words were, and let me rewind, going back to finding the right doctor. So finally finding a doctor that I trust, I feel that hears me. When she made this recommendation to me, I took it seriously, and she didn't make the recommendation in a way that was just sort of flippant, like, hey, just try this group. It was, here's the group, they specialize in this treatment. This is all they do. So with that, I heard what she was saying, So, of course, you do your online research, and I set up the appointment. And honestly, your gut never leads you wrong. So, having that meeting with the surgeon, the doctor, and I'll probably mispronounce her name. I appreciated a couple of things. One, she answered my question. She never made me feel like I was just one in the pipeline and she had to hurry up with me so she can get to the next person. So, it was that patience and just answering my questions thoroughly and listening to what I was asking and not just giving me a canned speech, but actually responding to my questions. The other piece was her taking the time to explain things to me. And it wasn't in a way to assume that I'm ignorant or, not as educated, but it was in a way so that I understood what would be happening should I decided to go down this path. The other aspect of research that weighed in on my decision is the technique that they use. So not only is it more advanced, it was also developed by this team. So, I could go back and look at some of the trials and things like that and, just see over the years, just the positive outcomes and, just risk all of those things for this particular procedure. So I didn't feel like they were selling me on something new. I felt as if, as my doctor said, they specialize in this and this is what they do. So that sort of sold me. I spoke to a lot of friends and family who either have undergone, whether it's a myomectomy, a hysterectomy, or are in the medical field. And, when I hear like their recuperation times and what they went through, I thought, why weren't they referred to a place like this to kind of make it easier on them? I was anxious to see whether or not the recuperation period would be as short as they said. And they were right. This is major abdominal surgery. So again, the people that I know who have gone through this, and when you read online, even for laparoscopic surgery, you're talking people don't feel themselves until well after a month after the surgery itself. And you're under certain restrictions, at least 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks. I would say within a week, I felt good, but I was monitoring myself. I didn't want to overdo it, but I didn't have the pain. I didn't take any of the narcotics prescribed. I think I took 2 ibuprofen only as a precaution because I was expecting to feel pain. So just sort of in anticipation, I think I took one, one evening, so I wouldn't wake up feeling any pain, but honestly, very minimal pain. And within 2 weeks, again, I felt like my old self. But of course, I only implemented some self-restrictions because I hadn't had my follow-up appointment yet. And I wanted to hear it from, Dr. D that I do. It's funny. I was saying to a friend of mine, you don't realize you're living with certain discomfort. So I don't have the back pain. Other things, this is sharing with women. So because the fibroids had gone, it had grown so large, you start to develop other issues, with your bladder and other things. You don't really recognize how things are connected. And I would say that's been alleviated after this surgery. So just even getting back to feeling like I can exercise now, I can do certain things, really makes the difference. I've already recommended people, sent the link. And, a couple of things, it always goes back to, what works for you. And that they really think about what quality of life means to them. And you don't realize that you're cutting yourself short on quality of life when you're not trying to treat your situation. The other piece I would say, because, I did this and I knew I was doing it, but, putting everybody else and their care ahead of mine. And, it just so worked out that, with my dad's condition, that had to be the primary focus. But if you can prioritize your own health, because the more you put things off, the higher the risk you're putting yourself at for, more serious conditions. And, the other piece I would say is, and this, this may fit in or not. So at first I was like, a surgery center, so it's not a hospital, trying to figure out like what this place is. And when we got there, I was like, okay, this is different. But afterwards, I realized that it was the right choice because it was a calmer environment. So, think about, the environment where that's going to put you at ease. So for me, I recognized it was calmer. I felt like the focus was on me. And as one of my friends pointed out, there's also a lower risk for infection and other things because it's a contained environment. So those are some things I would also recommend, if you're thinking about having this procedure, also think about where it would take place. Because sometimes people get anxious thinking about being in a hospital. And you don't have to go to a hospital. You can go to a highly specialized place that's calming, that's, not where you're the primary focus. And, it's also very condensed. So, just lower risk of infections and other things. That place is out there for you.